I heard a lot of things about Japan before I went there. Most of them consisting of Japanese people don't have opinions. Women only feel safe if they are in women-only coaches. Japan is like a real-life anime. I also had certain expectations about Japan before I went there, although they fully consisted of worries and fears. Mostly about what people think of me and how I would fit into Japanese society. And of course, they were created by YouTube videos and anime. Those worries ended up being pointless. Before you hop on that plane, forget about all those things. Delete them from your internal memory. The more you lock yourself in that box, filled with what other people have told you about the country, the more expectations you have, and the more that will affect your experience in the country and your perception of it. When you're going to a country that's very different from yours culturally, it's important to have an open mind and no expectations. That doesn't mean not to heed safety warnings or not to follow rules. It means not to confuse those things with prejudices and stereotypes, and not letting them warp your view of the country. I have two catchphrases I use all the time, and you might even say that they form a part of my personal philosophy for navigating life. The first one is, whatever happens, happens. Most of us have probably seen videos of tourists, YouTubers, and streamers doing extremely stupid and rude things in Japan. We've probably seen a whole lot of entitled Karens getting into the personal space of normal people just to get the perfect photo. I've also met my fair share of foreigners who believe that they don't have to do what everyone else is doing because they know better, and it's the Japanese people who are confused. I was in Japan when the pandemic hit, and the amount of foreigners I saw that refused to wear masks on trains made my blood boil. This is not your country. If you don't trust the government, if you don't trust health organizations or whatever, if you think that you know better, if you want to make other people feel uncomfortable, if you don't want to follow the rules, if you don't want to adhere to guidelines, do that in your own country, okay? You are a guest. How is this such a hard concept? If you're in a certain country and that country has certain guidelines, regulations, laws, expectations, you follow them. You are a guest. Just follow the rules and be respectful. Be considerate of others. You're visiting a country, not a circus show. You're encountering real people, not paid actors, and you most certainly haven't paid anyone to act a certain way or to be okay with you being an entitled idiot. The world does not revolve around you. Grow up. Japan does not owe you anything for you deciding to spend your money to visit it. Honey, hello. When I went to Japan, my Japanese was at about N4 level. I really struggled with speaking Japanese. I felt a lot of anxiety about it, and I was very scared about making mistakes and people judging me, which is a completely ridiculous thing to be scared of when you're trying to learn a new language, and especially when you are living in a country that speaks said language. Stupidity at its finest. But I wasn't only scared of being judged if I made mistakes, I was also scared of being thought as a weep. And I think that's mainly because when I was growing up in Bulgaria, I was made fun of for liking anime. I was teased a lot about liking Japanese culture and wanting to learn Japanese language. And I always felt like if I spoke Japanese, people would think it was cringe. Because back home, if you liked anime, you were the weird one. And I wasn't even the type of anime fan that would wear badges or would try and dress in a more specific style or would constantly talk about anime. I was a very hidden anime fan. Whenever I did bring it up with friends were fine because I surrounded myself with people who also liked animes and other type of geeky stuff. But especially in school, when I mentioned anime, the reaction wasn't good. And that kind of stuck with me. And I remember in English classes when I would get so bored that I would take out a Japanese textbook and I would study that. And the teacher would let me be because he knew I was fine with whatever we were doing in English. But then the students would make fun of that. And so when I went to Japan, not only was I afraid of being judged, I was embarrassed of speaking the language because people might think it's cringe if I do it. And it took me a lot of time to get rid of that mentality. And it was very detrimental to my language learning progression. And when you are living in a foreign country, a little goes a long way. Even if you speak a little bit of the native language of the country, people would appreciate it, and getting used to life there becomes easier. So I'd say the first lesson I learned in Japan was to stop being embarrassed of speaking in a foreign language. Because it's stupid. Like, why? Another very important thing I learned in Japan was speaking very clearly and explaining things in a very simple way. My roommate was from Taiwan, and her Japanese was better than my English, and my English was better than my... As I was saying, my roommate was from Taiwan, and her Japanese was better than my English, and my English was better than her Japanese. Now, thankfully, her English was still at a good level, so we communicated in English. And I think some of the fondest memories of our time together were the late night walks from campus back to the I house, when we would talk about politics. And she would ask me to explain some political concepts and theories to her. And I had to figure out how to present them in simple ways with simple words. Learning that skill has been extremely beneficial, especially now that I study law and you have to know how to explain complex stuff in simple English. And especially as someone whose native language isn't English, learning to do this has been amazing. You might have heard about honne, tatemae. Honne are your true feelings and wants. Tatemae is how you behave and what you say in public. It is hard to tell what people think, but there's nothing you can do about that. It is what it is. And I have definitely met people from a variety of nationalities that are hard to read. As someone who did a degree in politics, I think it's very interesting to observe and learn from this, because it's a behavior type you see quite often in politics, and it's not strictly restricted to a specific nationality. I do think it affords a certain flexibility and adaptability, because it can boost your people skills. You can't be the same with every person you meet, and act and speak the same way in every group of people you're in. To be honest, I feel like that complicates things a lot more than if you learn how to navigate your surroundings. That doesn't make you fake, unless you are being two-faced and you're lying. Then it becomes a different story. It does also tie with kukyoyum, reading the air. It really heightens your awareness of other people's feelings. I'd argue it even makes you more empathetic. Yes, it is exhausting. But again, if you start paying more attention to the people around you, you will probably notice that you're either employing that skill already, someone around you is already using it, or you should probably start using it. We all give out social cues, both intentionally and unintentionally, and let's not lie to each other, it feels nice when people pick up on them, even if we don't realize that we want people to pick up on them. Because at the end of the day, it's just basic human psychology and empathy. Two things that shouldn't really be mind-boggling. When you're entering a new environment and there are things you don't understand, it is natural to ask questions, to try and find connections to what you know, to want the people around you to understand from what kind of environment you're coming from, why you think and act a certain way, why your new environment is so different for you, and that's okay. However, I have met some foreigners who take this a step further and begin questioning everything in their new environment and drawing comparisons with their own country and insist on having an opinion about everything and sharing it. Not gonna lie, at least from my experience, this type of behavior has come the most from big Western countries. And to me, it has always felt a bit like the Western savior is here to enlighten you and show you the way. But here are a few questions to think about. Are you questioning things because you want to understand them, or because you want to pass judgment or come out superior? Do you have to share your opinion? Do the people around you really care? Even if there are cultural things and societal expectations that don't make sense to you, just do them. Don't forget that you're either a guest or someone who is trying to integrate. You're not special. Japanese society is not going to change specifically for you. Stop trying to stand out. You don't have to be the loudest, most magnetic person in the room. It's okay to criticize and question things, as long as it's constructive. If it's just hate or desire to be morally superior, shut up. If you don't really know what you're talking about, shut up. It's okay to admit you don't know something or you don't understand it. It's okay not to have an opinion. Just listen, watch, and learn. In school, I would never raise my hand. And at university here in the UK, I would never just speak out. Even when we had group discussions, I would just stay quiet. In my first and second year at uni, when I was living with my flatmates, with all of my power, I would do everything I could to avoid them. I remember in my first year at uni, whenever I wanted to go to the kitchen, I would call someone. I would call my mom, my dad, or my boyfriend, or a friend, just so I wouldn't be in the kitchen alone and then have someone come in and speak to me, or go into the kitchen and find people there and then have to speak to them. That's how bad it was. When I went to Japan, it seemed like there was this expectation that I would be bubbly and friendly and I would talk a lot. And because there was that expectation, I just did it. So I learned how to lead conversations that were outside of my comfort zone. I learned that my opinion actually mattered and it was okay to express it. I definitely learned that there are people out there who are a lot more introverted than me and who feel a lot less confident than me about sharing their thoughts. Realizing that made me more confident in a way. Because it's like, you know, when two introverts walk in a room and one of the introverts actually has to take the leading role because otherwise nothing's going to happen. Well, that was generally my whole experience in Japan. And that has stuck with me. I personally feel that the friendships I made in Japan run a lot deeper than a lot of friendships I've made in the UK and in Bulgaria. Mainly because the people I met in Japan, they were kind of like me. Just us being there, like in the iHouse, meant that we shared the same interests or the same goals, and we already had these matching points that brought us together. And we were also the foreigners placed in a new country with a new language, and there was kind of this feeling of camaraderie from the get-go. Now, even if we barely talk, I still feel the connection. And when we meet again, it's like we've never been apart. And I think that's an amazing gift. And it's also because you're put into a situation where you have to tackle challenges together. You have to ask for help. You can share your frustrations, and you know that the person in front of you will most probably understand you, and they might be having the exact same issue or similar one, you know? So you feel understood. And then when your time abroad ends and you go your separate ways, you still have this one huge experience that you share together. And in a way, I think it's a very magical experience. In my first year at uni, I took a class called Politics and Popular Culture in Modern Japan. And there were these two dudes who would go on and on about how amazing and perfect Japan was. And as examples, they would list the cleanliness and the safety. And of course, they would say that it was like a real-life anime. And they would fetishize Japanese women. and other people's arguments against them just landed on deaf ears. While I was studying politics and law in Japan, there were some Japanese students who did not concern themselves with the news and what was happening neither abroad nor in Japan. And so whenever an issue about their own country was raised, they would become very defensive or they would jump directly to shogunate. It's never okay to put a country on a pedestal. Each country has its issues, and exploring them, analyzing them, critiquing them is essential for the functioning of civil society and political systems. Otherwise, we might as well live under authoritarian rule. Yes, Japan is quite safe. It has a 99.9% conviction rate. But there are huge human rights violations in the Japanese criminal justice system. Does the end justify the means? Women-only coaches exist for a reason, and stalking is on the rise. These are just some of the issues that plague Japan, and no one should be turning a blind eye to them because they might have an idealized image of the country. And this is a principle that is applicable to every country that exists. Before I moved to Japan, I had red hair, but I dyed it black because I was worried people would stare at me. I was worried people would stare at me if I wore shorts and low neck tops in summer. Guess what? None of that mattered. People stared at me all the time. If you're a very self-conscious person, if you're very hung up on religion and race, then this is not the country for you. I am very aware that racism runs a different way when it comes to people of color, and you should be prepared for that. But if you are white, do not for a second think you're safe from racism. You will encounter racism in one form or another. And if you can't handle that, then you should move away as quickly as possible because it will wear you down mentally. It is what it is. And making that decision to move away because of it does not make you weak in any way, because your mental health should be your top priority. And the whole thing about you'll never be Japanese no matter how long you live in the country, no matter how well you speak the language. Do you think Japan is the only country that's that way? Hell, the UK is the same. I will never be British. No matter how well I speak English, no matter if I have a UK education, no matter if I only hang out with British friends, if I have citizenship. Here, I've been told I'm white passing. I will always be classified as a minority. I'm always asked where I come from. Where is home for you? When will you go back? Point me to a country where you can move to as a foreigner, where they speak a different language from your native language, and where after some time, people and organizations will stop seeing you as a foreigner. Give me examples, please. It's key to accept you will always be a foreigner. Anyway, I will leave you at that because I have a lot of studying to do. My law exams are coming up. Pray for me. Like, subscribe. If you want to watch some more Japan videos, then you can check out these. If you want to watch some random stuff, then you can check out these. And if you see me upload a video before mid-July, then scold me because I should be studying, and if I upload, then I'm procrastinating. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.